Well, President Bush and the Republican presidential candidates say our economy is strong. Tell that, if you will, to America's working middle class, which is being squeezed more and more. And Democrats, by the way, they're not exactly putting their standards in the air and rushing to the rescue either. As Kitty Pilgrim now reports, our elected officials from both parties apparently don't realize how much our middle class is suffering, or they have other interests to serve.
That grocery bill, mortgage bill, school bill, and heating bill is gnawing away at the family budget, and income is shrinking. Does anybody care? President Bush today pushing hard for trade deals with Peru, Panama, Colombia, and South Korea had a sunnier outlook.
While the U.S. economy has continued to grow, and job expansion has been strong, and hourly wages are on the rise, and the job market for college graduates is bright.
But new IRS numbers point out what many American families have known for years. The rich are getting richer. The middle class is being crushed by debt. Brand new IRS data shows the country's upper income group, the top 1%, grabbing enormous percentage of the country's earning power, 21%, while the middle class is seeing income shrink.
Recent numbers that we've looked at show that debt growth has been particularly strong among middle-income families who have seen very slow wage growth, but also face rising costs.
New data by the IRS says the median taxpayer saw their income shrink 2% between 2000 and 2005. For the last year and a half, Federal Reserve data have shown Americans are spending all of their income and are using savings or credit to stay afloat. The Federal Reserve points out family financial burdens, basically mortgage and consumer debt, are at historic highs, and the average mortgage alone has doubled since 2000. Democrats are making much of their commitment to the middle class, but Democratic candidates are not campaigning in Michigan, which has been hit hard with manufacturing job losses. Democratic candidates are giving it the cold shoulder after Michigan jumped ahead in the primary calendar. While the candidates debate their policies over the upcoming winter months, home heating costs are projected to be 10% higher than last year, and words really won't help pay the bills, Lou.
Well, the fact is that this system is not working. This is a free enterprise democracy that the foundation of the American dream has been the ability of a man and woman in this country to create a family and to provide for them and to create a better life. That isn't happening for literally tens of millions of Americans. And it's time for people like President Bush, I don't care what he calls himself, a compassionate conservative, a Republican, or an abject fool. He's got to start thinking about the people in this country. And the Democrats, the idea they wouldn't go to Michigan to campaign. If I lived in the state of Michigan, I'd tell the Democratic Party to go to hell and don't ever come near me.
It certainly
because that state is in great pain. And those people are struggling to survive because of the stupid trade policies pursued by these idiots in both political parties for 30 years. By the fact, I mean, this is ridiculous what's going on in this country.
Yeah, they are ignoring the pain of the middle class of this country.
In my opinion, there's only one solution to get their attention. And I've said it 100 times, I'll keep saying it. Register independent, no matter who you're going to vote for, and serve notice on both of these branding mechanisms, these so-called political parties, that you're not going to be taken for granted. It's absurd. The arrogance not to campaign in Michigan, a state that needs answers. Jennifer Granholm, the governor, they're working like the Dickens, the mayor of Detroit, fighting as hard. I mean, these people, if I lived in Detroit, I'd want to slap the hell out of everybody involved in the Democratic National Party. All right, Kitty, thanks a lot. I appreciate it. Here's a novel idea. Employers who follow the law and they don't hire illegal aliens, and they do so because they want to be law-abiding. They don't have to wait for the federal government to enforce the law. Now, I know this kind of upsets the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the biggest lobbying organization for business in this country, kind of upsets the ACLU, upsets the AFL-CIO, and all of those socio-ethnic centric interest groups who want to move ahead this amnesty agenda in utter disregard for the American people, that is, American citizens, or for Congress. By the way, they don't even seem to be wanting to wait for them to write something called comprehensive immigration reform up. You know, the one that's gone down in flames twice. These businesses don't even want to wait for the courts to give them permission. All they want to do is be good corporate citizens. And as Bill Tucker now reports, thousands of American companies are obeying the law and hiring only legal workers.
The stonemasons field, like many areas of construction, is rife with illegal alien workers. Not so at Masonry Art in Kansas City.
It's important that I hire legal workers, mainly because I'm an American and I believe in our immigration laws.
He admits that most of his customers don't ask, don't know, don't care whether his workers are legal or not. He calls his decision a personal one that quite literally has a higher price when it comes to bidding on work.
My number is generally higher than somebody that's probably using illegal workers. But the guys that are using illegal workers generally aren't supplying the quality that I am.
His business is successful. Josh Link checks on the work status of his new hires by using E-Verify, an online electronic verification program provided to employers by the Department of Homeland Security. It's voluntary, it's free. It works by verifying a valid Social Security number and also tells a potential employer whether a worker is a legal alien or has a newly issued green card or work authorization documents. The inquiry also produces a picture of newly documented workers. Link says the process is not burdensome.
I don't want to get in any trouble personally. I want my company to do the things that we're supposed to do, and I want the government to do the things they're supposed to do.
Josh is a member of a new association of employers who pledge to hire legal workers, pro-America companies. The philosophy of the 4-month-old organization, currently in 44 states, is simple.
We can wait all day long for our government to somehow do the right sort of enforcement, and we get the right sort of political mix on the Hill. It's not going to make any difference if we as the American people don't sit up straight, be adults, and understand that this is our responsibility.
According to the government, there are some 26,499 companies currently using E-Verify.
And the government also reports that during fiscal 2007, 3.2 million inquiries were put into the system, which is almost double the rate of 2006. 92% of the time, employers got an answer of yes or no within 3 to 5 seconds. Those that took longer had to be manually checked, and Lou, only 1% of the non-matches were ever contested.
So, I mean, basically what we want to say here is Josh Link and the other business people in this country who actually care about the country, our national values, want to be responsible citizens, want their businesses to be responsible corporate and business citizens, don't need any of these idiots in this administration. They don't need this scurrilous Chamber of Commerce or the National Association of Manufacturers or any of these fools running these bureaucracies to do the right thing. No. Imagine that.
Imagine.
I just want to say, I mean, the idea that we've got men and women in this country trying to do the right thing, trying to be responsible citizens, and not getting the support of their president or the leadership of their political parties or their representatives in Washington. Every one of these elected officials and everyone in leadership in this federal government ought to be embarrassed into sackcloth and ashes. And I just find, I cannot believe we tolerate this in this country. Good for these people, and God bless you for doing the right thing. Thank you, Bill Tucker. Well, that brings us to the subject of our poll tonight. Are you astounded, by the way, that a federal court, no matter its political bias, could determine that it's an unfair burden to require businesses to follow U.S. immigration laws? You know, like the idiot judge out in San Francisco? Yes or no? Cast your vote at LouDobbs.com. We'll have the results here later in the broadcast. Coming up next, the Democratic presidential candidates, they're ganging up on the doggone front runner. I'll be discussing that with some of the best political minds in the country. We want to be fair to Hillary Clinton no matter what here. And the Nobel Committee, well, the Peace Committee, selects Al Gore for the Peace Prize. Will that prompt him to run for the White House, or will it just be really a moment of contentment that will last for years and years without a further indication of ambition politically? We'll find out. Our panel of political analysts and strategists will tell us. Stay with us. Joining me now for more on all of the week's political developments and news, three of the best political minds, syndicated columnist Miguel Perez, Michael Goodwin, New York Daily News, Democratic strategist, Democratic National Committeeman Robert Zimmerman, supporting none other than Senator Hillary Clinton. How's she doing?
She's doing pretty fine, thank you. Doing pretty well.
We'll examine that closer.
I know we will.
several moments. Let's turn to first the idea that the Democratic Party is not going into Michigan, the state with the highest unemployment rate, absolutely devastating debt, been crushed by these idiotic free trade policies pursued by this administration and the previous Clinton administration in particular. I mean, what is that party thinking about, Miguel?
I don't know. It's inexplicable to me. But it all goes back to Florida, to, you know, the parties are declaring war on certain states because of the primary shuffle. And you know, everybody wants to be first.
The Democratic National Committee and the Republican National Committee, in fairness, they want to run things because this is a national political system, and the hell with the grassroots and the little people who just sit down there in the precincts and the districts and make up the party itself.
But the problem, Lou, is that I think we have a very disorganized primary system that needs to be changed.
No, I'm with you.
I mean, New Hampshire and Iowa, every time, I mean, we have to have a much more organized system, and it's been proposed that some changes have already been proposed. We need to do something about that.
I don't know about you, Michael Goodwin, but I would love to see a brokered convention again. I'd like to see the national committees and national media buys for all of these candidates, just all of them just pushed into the gutter, and take this back to a grassroots nation in which we take our politics seriously at the local level, and no one fails to take into account local political instincts and leaders.
Well, I think the way it's shaping up, it's probably going to be the opposite of that. I mean, particularly among the Democrats, I think they're going to have a very early winner.
We're starting a revolution here, Mike.
I'm just here to give you analysis on it. The revolution is going to need a big lift, because I think the way the Democrats are going, in particular, Hillary Clinton is going to wrap this up very early next year, and then you're going to have a whole year.
Robert Zimmerman is just over here glowing as you say that.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm here to give opinion, not just analysis. Yeah, very direct about that. First and foremost, of course, the Democrats are going to campaign in Michigan.
But why is everybody refusing to go there now?
Because when the rules were established for the primary and caucus process, Michigan, along with Florida, voted for the order that took place. Michigan now decides, which is their right, they want to break the rules. They want to jump the order.
And so the Democrats running for president say the hell with Michigan.
No one's saying that at all.
Well, what are they saying?
They're
then?
saying
Why
that,
aren't they in
they're
Michigan?
saying
Why
there
aren't
were
they
rules
there? Wait a minute. Why aren't they in there taking care of the people they say they want to represent? How can your candidate, for example, Senator Hillary Clinton, supported by Indian American businesses and supporting offshoring and outsourcing and backing these free trade agreements that are all at the root of the Michigan problems, how can she in any conscience say she wants to represent the American working man and woman and not be in Michigan?
Let me answer that question.
I'm pleased.
First and foremost, I'm not her spokesperson, but she did oppose the Central America Free.
You are an enthusiastic supporter.
Very enthusiastic supporter of hers. But she and many of the Democrats running with her opposed the Central American Free Trade Agreement, opposed the Korean Free Trade Agreement, and the Democratic Congress
why don't they get in there and get nose to nose with the people who count in the state of Michigan who are living in pain and suffering right now?
And the Democratic Congress insisted upon the fast-track process expire. As far as Michigan goes.
And by the way, I want to say, God bless the Democratic Congress for doing that.
I'm 1 for 20, so I'm doing pretty good.
No, well, there's like a couple more. Minimum wage, don't forget that.
Okay, I'm trying. But the point here, though, Lou, is obviously they have to be in Michigan. They will be in Michigan. But when you establish rules for a primary and caucus procedure,
for crying out loud, you sound like a lawyer, Robert Zimmerman. Jeez.
So
get into Michigan.
I had 1 point. I said, okay.
Or give it over to the Republicans. You know, they've been just
Michigan
a boffo representative for working men and women here of late. They can get grief. Don't even. We'll be back here in just a moment. We're going to figure out which political party has any sensibility about representing you, me, working men and women, families, and a middle class in desperate need of representation. Stay with us. Well, this is my first week back, and my voice tonight cracking just a bit. My tonsils getting removed. It's a little weakness, but my return and apparently that change in my voice didn't go unnoticed by one late night talk show host.
The controversial CNN anchor, Lou Dobbs. You know, Lou Dobbs is back at work after having a tonsillectomy. And, you know, I don't know where he had the operation done. But he sounds different now, you know? Alan, do we have that clip?
Lou Dobbs recovering from a tonsillectomy. Last night, Wolf Blitzer welcomed Lou back on the air.
I want to say thank you to all of you who sent your best wishes for a speedy recovery from that little stay with my tonsillectomy, and I was unaccustomed as I am to not be able to speak for a while. We thank you very much.
I'm going to work on that. Thank you very much. I kind of like that. What did you think, Miguel?
That was very funny.
Well, I hope everybody enjoyed it. And the idea that this week also, Vicente Fox, former president of Mexico, challenging me to a debate on the Larry King Show. We put it to a vote here on the show, and I accepted. Do you think that's a good idea? We have a few things to talk about.
I'm with the majority. I've been sitting in the chat rooms and seeing everybody online saying, yeah, 90% say that you should go for it.
Well, we're going to go for it, even though
I want to have a front row seat.
Well, as a matter of fact, we'll organize it. I'll take you as one of my as one of the friendlies into San Cristobal, Chiapas, Mexico, where we'll be doing. I gave him home court advantage. It's hard. It's Doug McIntyre, KABC Radio, suggested home court advantage would have also been had we chosen California. The idea that New York's Governor Elliot Spitzer wants to give illegal aliens now driver's licenses, the idea comes out of nowhere. What's your reaction, Miguel?
I think he went about it the wrong way. I think he should have explained what he had in mind a little further before he just dictated this change. But I agree with him.
You agree?
I agree with him because, look, it's not going to deter immigrants from coming in, illegal immigrants from coming into the country. It's not going to make anybody go back home. What it does, Lou, is it has a lot of people that have not been tested out there without insurance and putting all in jeopardy.
No, I think it's mistaken. What's really remarkable is that polls are showing enormous numbers of Democrats oppose him on this. And the majority of Democrats oppose him in liberal New York State. So this is a very unpopular.
Al Gore, Nobel Peace Prize for global warming? Help me out here.
Because his leadership for over 20 years to save our planet from the destruction of its inhabitants.
Cue the band.
No, you bet there should be a band. It is a tremendous tribute to his courage and his vision. And I just think we can all take pride in what he's accomplished.
Me too.
Absolutely.
Even though I'm an independent.
Especially independence, because it's about citizen activism. That's the award.
It may be a great accomplishment for Al Gore, but it's clearly a political slap as well at the White House. When you have the UN and Al Gore, you couldn't
that's
find...
what this White House really was missing. Another slap. That's what...
Well, you couldn't find two more anti-Bush than the UN and Al Gore.
Right.
Let's not forget the $35 billion in tax breaks going to the oil companies that this administration has given us.
You get the last word, Miguel.
I'm an independent too, and I want Al Gore to jump in the race because I don't want to vote for Hillary.
Well, we're going to change your mind on that.
You're sure you're an independent?
Yes, sir.
You narrowed the field already down to two folks.
Well, no. On the Democratic side.
Oh, okay.
I take Al Gore at his word.
Well, it's going to be fun. I'm really hoping. Thanks very much, Miguel. Appreciate it, Michael. Thank you, and Robert, as always. And tell Senator Clinton hello for us all. Thank you. Coming up next at the Situation Room and Wolf Blitzer. Wolf.
Thanks very much, Lou. A stunning assessment of the war in Iraq from the general formerly in charge of it. He's calling it, and I'm quoting now, a nightmare with no end in sight. Lieutenant General Ricardo Sanchez blasting U.S. government officials. Find out what else he has to say. That's coming up also. The race for the White House is on track to shatter records for spending on television ads. The bottom line, $3 billion for all these campaigns. Plus, my interview with Al Gore, now the winner of the Nobel Peace Prize. We'll talk about the environment and the presidential race. All that, Lou, coming up right here in the Situation Room.
Thanks, Wolf. Coming up here next, more of your thoughts and the results of tonight's poll. Stay with us. We're coming right back.
Criticism and a grim assessment of the war in Iraq from the U.S. general who was in charge of it for more than a year. Now retired, Ricardo Sanchez says, America is living a nightmare with no end in sight. That's a direct quote. And he's sharply critical of U.S. strategy with stinging judgment of government officials. Let's bring in our senior Pentagon correspondent, Jamie McIntyre. He's here in the Situation Room. These are A blunt assessment from General Sanchez, but how surprising is it?
Well, you know, when I was with General Sanchez back at the beginning of the war, he was brimming with confidence. He was the top commander of U.S. troops in Iraq. He's retired now. His career cut short by the fallout of the Abu Ghraib scandal that happened on his watch, and he's turned now into one of the biggest critics of how the Bush administration has managed the war, calling it a catastrophic failure. Here's one of the quotes from remarks he made in Washington at a conference of military journalists, as reported by StarsandStripes.com. Quote, from a catastrophically flawed, unrealistically optimistic war plan to the administration's latest surge strategy, this administration has failed to employ and synchronize the political, economic, and military power. Now, Sanchez told the group of military reporters and editors, MRE as they're known, that he had reservations about the strategy when he was in Iraq back in 2003 and 2004, but he felt he couldn't resign without jeopardizing his troops. But now he's retired. He says the current strategy is too little and doomed to fail. Again, his words, as you said, quoted by the Stars and Stripes, there is no question that America is living a nightmare with no end in sight. You know, Sanchez was in line for promotion to 4-star general until he was tarred by the Abu Ghraib scandal. While officially cleared of any wrongdoing, he has fierce critics in Congress, and for a while he sat quietly in a job in Europe, hoping this would blow over, but the controversy essentially made him unconfirmable, and then he retired. Wolf?
And he's by no means the only top commander. There are a bunch of commanders who have come back from Iraq, retired, and are speaking out in very similar words that this war has become a nightmare.
Right, and he held his peace until then. Again, I think some of his critics are going to say, well, why didn't he say more of this when at the time? But he said he feels it's very unhealthy for serving military officers to be openly questioning the strategy. It's their job to try to carry it out, try to make it work, but he feels free to talk now.
What a blunt assessment from General Sanchez. Thanks very much, Jamie McIntyre. Also tonight, Al Gore is capping his transformation from losing presidential candidate to commander-in-chief of the international battle against global warming.